The national average savings account yield right now sits at 0.46%, APY. Inflation, even at its most optimistic Federal Reserve projection, runs between 2.5% and 3.2% annually. That spread, that silent, compounding gap between what your bank pays you and what the economy extracts from you, is destroying purchasing power at a rate most six-figure professionals refuse to calculate because the math is too uncomfortable to confront directly. This isn't a savings problem. It's a structural wealth erosion problem, dressed in the language of financial responsibility. Run the arithmetic precisely. A corporate director with $150,000 parked in a high-yield savings account at 4.75%, which is the aggressive end of today's HYSA market, earns approximately $7,125 in gross interest annually. That interest is taxed as ordinary income at the 32% federal bracket, plus applicable state income taxes averaging 5.4% across high-income states like New York, California, and Illinois. The effective after-tax yield collapses to roughly 2.8%. Core PCE inflation, the Federal Reserve's preferred measurement, averaged 3.7% between 2021 and 2024. Your after-tax yield is 2.8%. Inflation is 3.7%. The net result is a negative real return of approximately 0.9% per year on money you've been conditioned to believe is working for you. On $150,000, that's $1,350 in silent annual wealth destruction. Over a decade, with compounding inflation applied, the real purchasing power erosion exceeds $21,000 on a static deposit. You're not saving. You're subsidizing the bank's lending operations at a personal loss. The savings account trap doesn't persist because people are financially illiterate. It persists because it solves a very specific psychological need, the illusion of control in a volatile environment. The 2008 financial crisis drove an entire generation of high-earning professionals into liquidity hoarding. When Lehman Brothers collapsed overnight and credit markets froze, the cultural memory that crystallized wasn't diversify intelligently. It was, cash is king. That trauma response became a generational financial operating system, one the banking industry has monetized aggressively ever since. There's also the identity dimension. For a mid-level VP or a senior manager earning $180,000 annually, a $100,000 savings balance feels like proof of competence. It's a psychological scoreboard, not a financial strategy. The number validates the sacrifice. It confirms the 70-hour weeks and the deferred vacations were rational decisions. Questioning the vehicle means questioning the sacrifice itself, which most high performers are psychologically unwilling to do. This is what behavioral economists call status quo liquidity bias, the systematic overweighting of perceived safety over measurable real returns. Here's the institutional framework that reframes this entirely. Every dollar sitting in a savings account carries what sophisticated portfolio architects call a dead capital coefficient, the invisible rate at which idle, tax-inefficient liquid assets erode compounding potential relative to deployed capital over the same time horizon. The dead capital coefficient isn't just about yield. It accounts for three simultaneous drains: inflation erosion, ordinary income tax on interest, and opportunity cost, the compounding return forgone by not deploying that capital into a productive asset class. Model it against a straightforward alternative. The S&P 500's inflation-adjusted average annual return from 1993 to 2023 is approximately 7.8% after accounting for dividend reinvestment. Long-term capital gains on that return for a professional in the $150,000 $400,000 income range are taxed at 15%. not at the 32% to 37% ordinary income rate applied to savings account interest. The after-tax real return differential between a savings account and a low-cost index fund held over 15 years isn't marginal. On $150,000, it compounds to a gap exceeding $340,000 in net wealth. $340,000. Not from exotic instruments, not from options trading or speculative positions, from the structural tax efficiency and compounding mechanics of deployed equity capital versus idle cash, a distinction that most wealth management conversations conveniently avoid because banks profit directly from your inertia. The institutional grade correction isn't to eliminate cash reserves. That's reckless. It's to implement a tiered liquidity architecture, a three-layer capital structure that separates functional liquidity from wealth-building capital with surgical precision. Layer 1 is your operational reserve, 3 months of fixed living expenses, nothing more, held in a federally insured HYSA or a treasury bill ladder with 90-day maturities. T-bills currently yield approximately 5.25% and are exempt from state and local income taxes, an immediate efficiency gain over most savings accounts for residents of high-tax states. Layer 2 is your strategic buffer, an additional 3 months of expenses structured inside a taxable brokerage account, allocated to short-duration bond ETFs or money market funds with institutional yields. This capital is accessible within 48 to 72 hours and generates returns taxed at preferential capital gains rates rather than ordinary income rates. Layer 3, and this is where the compounding begins, is your deployment capital. Every dollar beyond that 6-month threshold gets systematically allocated into productive assets on a rules-based schedule. This means maxing tax-advantage vehicles first, the $23,000 401k contribution limit for 2024, the $7,000 IRA ceiling, then directing the remainder into low-cost, tax-efficient equity index funds inside a taxable brokerage. The discipline isn't in picking securities. It's in refusing to allow lifestyle creep, psychological comfort, or banking industry marketing to keep productive capital stranded in instruments designed to generate returns for the institution, not for you. Audit your current cash position this week. Calculate the exact dollar amount exceeding 6 months of essential expenses. That excess isn't your safety net, it's your dead capital, and every quarter it sits idle, the coefficient compounds against you. What makes this erosion particularly insidious is the environment in which it thrives. The savings account trap doesn't operate in isolation. It's sustained by the same psychological and structural architecture that keeps high-income professionals locked inside compensation frameworks they've confused for wealth creation. When a professional is psychologically anchored to a W-2 salary, a corporate title, and a savings balance as the primary metrics of financial progress, the dead capital coefficient isn't a bug in their system. It's a feature of the system, designed to contain them. Because a professional who hoards liquidity out of job security anxiety never builds the asset base required to negotiate from independence. That exact mechanism, the way income dependency and liquidity hoarding reinforce each other to suppress real wealth accumulation, is precisely what feeds the golden handcuff dynamic at the structural level. Click the video on your screen right now, and let's pull back the next layer to dissect how the golden handcuffs trap engineers the psychological conditions that make the dead capital coefficient not just possible, but mathematically inevitable for the highest earning, most ambitious professionals in the American corporate system.